There's a particular kind of bravery involved in driving a Ford Scorpio today. Not because it's fast or dangerous, but it's because you're doing it knowing that everybody can see you. It's a car that's more mocked than remembered, but here's the thing. Underneath that bodywork is actually a really good car. Let's take a look at the controversy that surrounded it and check out what Ford's idea of a luxury car feels like today. This is a 1998 Scorpio Ultima 2.3 16 valve, the final and most luxurious version of Ford's big executive car. When launched in 1994, it replaced the Granada, a name with huge heritage. The Granada was suave, square-jawed and respected. The Scorpio, not so much. Clarkson compared it to an extra on Finding Nemo. Ford called it organic design. The rest of us thought it'd been left too long next to a radiator. While it's never going to be a pretty car, I think it's aged surprisingly well, especially this facelift version with the different grille, headlights and bumpers which tone down its face and the gloopy rear end. And to be fair, underneath there was a lot of good engineering. The Scorpio sat on the same rear-wheel drive platform as the Granada, but with improved torsional stiffness and reworked suspension. And the 2.3 litre double overhead cam 16 valve was actually surprisingly smooth and refined, if not exactly quick. 148 horsepower gave it a 0 to 60 of 9.5 seconds, which was okay for a big refined cruiser like this. And actually the 2.3 litre was pretty much as fast as the 12 valve V6 version. So really, this is the engine to have. Ford even offered a Cosworth version with a 2.9 litre V6 offering 205 horsepower, the poshest fast Ford at the time. The interior though is where things get properly mad. This is the Ultima, so the top line version, and you get leather, wood, heated everything, and more gadgets than one of Bond's cars. This car came with a CD auto changer, climate control, aircon, heated leather seats, cruise control, automatically dimming mirror, electric windows, ABS, alloy wheels, fog lights, electric mirrors, and a sat-nav with a voice that sounds like Queen Elizabeth.
Turn left ahead, in 200 yards, turn left.
To spec a 5 Series to the same level, you would have had to remortgage your house. And it's quite charming how proud Ford was of all this. The brochure called it a statement of achievement, which is true. It's just not quite clear what achievement that was. When the Scorpio was launched, Ford genuinely hoped it could compete with BMW and Mercedes, but they underestimated just how important image was in this segment. The Granada had credibility. It was the choice of bank managers and middle managers who wanted to look serious. The Scorpio looked surprised. And yet it did a lot right. It was quiet, solidly built, and incredibly comfortable on long journeys. Fleet managers loved them because they were cheaper than a BMW, but much plusher. One journalist even claimed that it drove as well as the 5 Series that he had on long-term test. Let's see if he was right. Let me tell you one thing, Ford knew how to make comfortable seats in these days. These are just amazing, and at the back as well. That bench is so soft and squishy. It's just a delight. Now, they did make them in manual. This one is an auto, which, to be quite honest, suits its character pretty well, I think. We've just had a real downpour, and thankfully it stopped, although to be fair, out of all the cars that I've tested recently, if I had to go out in the rain, this would be the one which would have been absolutely fine to do that. Now, that 2.3 for a 4-cylinder really is quite smooth. I'm not surprised that hardly any of the 12-valve V6s were sold, because this is a better engine and it's also much less thirsty. Now, this really is a refined car. Low speed ride is really, really good. I mean, it feels like a luxury car. If you forget you're in a Ford, don't look at your surroundings, don't look at that dashboard, nothing else. And you really do feel quite cassetted in this. Engine noise is largely absent, no vibrations coming through from the engine, and it's just handling this really broken up road like an absolute champ. I don't think that an E-Class from this time would ride any better than this. I think perhaps the mechanical isolation from the suspension would have been slightly better, so actually the noise that the suspension makes as it's going over bumps. But apart from that, in terms of what it's transmitting through to the cabin, this is absolutely brilliant. It was never really meant to be a fast car, but let's see how that 2.3 feels when it's stretched a little bit, if it maintains that smoothness. Wow, that is a great 4-cylinder engine for this kind of car. It really is completely butter smooth, up to about 6,250 I think it changes at. So the noise hardens a little bit when you press it, but it's not that lacking in pace. You have to wind it up a little bit, so the torque at the bottom isn't, you know, it's not got the fattest torque curve. But as soon as you go up sort of past 4.5, it really does pick up pace. The gearbox, luckily, I think this is a 4-speeder, but it's pretty responsive. So when you put your foot down, it kicks down quite smoothly and fairly quickly. Sometimes it's a bit obtrusive the way it does it, but then this isn't the kind of car that should be driven like that anyway. Steering is spot on, nicely weighed. Not too nervous, not too quick, but surprisingly really precise. And if you think about the fact that also this feels, I think it is also genuinely narrow. It's long but narrow, but this feels like a narrow car, and it makes it quite easy to place on the road. Really surprised about how nice and precise it feels. Now, it's rear-wheel drive, which I think would be a real bonus on the bigger engined cars. With this, because of the amount of power it has, I'm not so sure if it's going to make a huge difference. Wind noise is completely absent. You've got the heated seats. Driving position is perfect. You can see why this is such a consummate mile muncher. Now, Ford may have thrown all the toys at it. This wood, to be honest, I think I read it was real wood, but I have to say, to me it looks a bit like plastic, so it's not the best looking feature of the car. The dash itself though is nice and swoopy, pleasant enough, and the ergonomics are really good because everything's to hand, everything's simple. The climate control is super easy, even the clock, that must be, you know, even your grandmother could adjust it, plus and minus. It's that easy, made for an idiot. Curious to see how it's going to handle these tighter S-bends. So let's just get it into second gear so it holds on to that and see what it's like. So again, the engine was really lacking the power to properly push me through it. So we'll try it again in a second. I'll leave it in drive. I was told that the sports button isn't working at the moment, so I won't bother with that. But perhaps in drive, it will kick down well enough on the way back. And we'll just take it through the gears again. But honestly, that engine is really smooth. Considering Ford's previous history with 4-cylinder engines, I mean, they're always reliable things, and they were pretty simple, but they were never the most refined. I'm really surprised at how good this one is. So foot pin to the floor and it keeps it between 4 and 6, which is good. it really turns in nicely. Body control is quite good as well. Okay, let's hope it changes down when I want it to, because holding second gear didn't really seem to work. Okay, well no, the gearbox is a bit unruly if you're trying to go quick, and to be fair, it's absolutely not what this was designed for, so I can't criticise it for it, but I wonder, with a manual gearbox, I think it would be fun even in tight bends like that. It just feels like the chassis has got so much in reserve. Really impressive from Ford. Now, it's such a shame that the looks were so controversial, because underneath, this really is a good car. And I think that Ford knew about that problem with its image and its looks, because if you check out the catalogues, they absolutely concentrate on the interior. Now, I personally have a bit of an irrational beef with this car, because when I was 19, I think, my father was actually working for Ford in Italy. And I went to visit him, and he had one of these. He had exactly this, the Ultima version with all the toys and stuff. And I remember seeing it, and you know, at the time, I didn't like the way they looked, and I thought, okay. Now, before that, he had a tamer turbo, other things that were a bit nicer. And but I remember sitting in it and thinking, actually, you know, it is a comfortable car, and I was sort of okay with it, until he casually told me that as a company car, they offered him the choice of either this or a Sierra Cosworth, and I just couldn't believe that he'd pick this. Driving it today though, and seeing just how comfortable it is, and what a great car it is, I'm kind of almost forgiven him for that choice. Now, some people even blame this for having taken Ford out of this sector altogether. After this, if you remember, they only had the Mondeo, so they left the executive segment. I think that's a little bit unfair, and I think there's a few reasons why that's not quite true. Now, the first thing is that Ford could never quite get the image right. It didn't have, you know, a German badge on it. So that's the first thing. It was never going to succeed anyway because of that, although the looks hampered it a little bit. But also, the whole sector was changing, and these big exec cars kind of died off. The German ones remained, but the audience largely moved on to SUVs and minivans instead of these. So I definitely do not blame this. It was unfortunate that the looks didn't work for it, because it was a great car, but I think this segment for Ford would have died off anyway. Now, if you wanted to buy one of these very unusual cars, you are really going to struggle. I was talking to the owner, James, earlier, and I think there's about 15 left the country in this particular spec. I had a look, and the only one that's currently advertised for sale is actually this very car. Well, it has to be said that James isn't in a hurry and is quite happy to hold on to it. If, though, you are interested in one, this is a nice, honest car. And I really have to say, I am impressed with the way it drives. It makes me feel a little bit sorry for the Scorpio that it didn't do better. I think it did deserve to do better, particularly this facelift version that, you know, is much less gormless looking at the front. If you have it in silver as well, which doesn't contrast as much with the grille, it's not that bad a looking car. And if you enjoyed this, do check out the video of the car that came before, the Granada. Now, a huge thanks to James for coming down and bringing this to me today. Thanks to all of you for watching. Thank you, and see you for the next one.